Hey everyone, in this video, we're going to go ahead and start building a React and Django REST framework portfolio website. So this website will be something you could use to show off your skills to future employers. And in this video, we'll go ahead and just set everything up. So we'll set up our front end and our back end. So next video, we can start building everything. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So I already have the folder for this project open. I have a terminal window open into this folder. So I should be all ready to go. Go ahead and get all that ready, and then we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing we'll do is we'll create our virtual environment. So I already have virtual env installed. If you don't have that installed, you can go ahead and just Google how to install it, or you can use python-m venv if you're more familiar with that. We'll go ahead and create a virtual environment. Then I'll do a pip install Django REST framework, all in one word. Oh, first I need to go ahead and activate my virtual environment. I forgot that step. So do a source env bin/activate for Windows and Mac, or for Mac and Linux. And then I'll go ahead and run that command again, pip install Django REST framework. And that should install it. Now I should be able to run Django admin start project API. Okay, now we do an ls here. We have an API folder. If I go inside of that, we have our manage.py and our API initial setup here, settings, URLs, all that sort of stuff. So now we have a project set up. Let's go ahead now and create a portfolio app for this project. So if you're not familiar with Django or Django REST framework, I'll put the links to the crash courses below. But so you can go through those first if this is all new to you. But what we can do here is we can cd into the API folder. We're in the same directory where we have our manage.py. And then we can go ahead and run python 3 manage.py start app. I'll call it portfolio. And now we have a API folder, our manage.py, and this portfolio folder here with our views, models, all that sort of stuff. And now we should have our project ready to go. So the first things for the setup here is inside the API folder, inside of settings, there's some things we want to do here. So I'll go ahead and pull this over here. So what we have here is the Django REST framework docs and kind of the quick start to get started. All right, I guess this is the home page. And I'll put links to this in the description below. But what we'll do here is we'll go ahead and follow this quick start guide to get this project set up. We already did a bunch of these. This is the other command to create a virtual environment if you'd like to do that. For Mac and Linux, you can run this, or on Windows, you can run this to activate your virtual environment. So all that's here in case you are kind of lost on those steps. Now we'll go ahead and just keep following this to get everything set up. So let's go ahead and run Python. In my case, it's Python 3, but Python 3 manage.py migrate to run our initial migrations. Python 3 manage.py migrate. And I'm going to go and skip the create superuser for now. And before I do anything else, I'm going to go and update my settings.py file for this and our URLs for that. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to update our installed apps to include the REST framework app that we installed, or the REST framework package we installed. So if we go back to the code here and we go into the installed apps, this is inside of settings.py. At the top here, I'm going to go ahead and add REST_framework and make sure you add a trailing comma there at the end. And then in their urls.py, I'm going to go ahead and add this line right here. And what this will do is this will give us the login, log out views for the Browsable API in case we need to log in. So we'll go ahead and just copy that. And we will come back to the code here and we'll paste that right there. We need to go ahead and import and include. So up here, Django.urls import path, we'll import include as well. And we'll save that. Okay. Now those projects should be set up. Let's go ahead and create a super user from the quick start guide. So do a quick start and then right down here, manage.py create super user. So I'll need my terminal here and I will do Python 3 manage.py create super user. Admin, that blank, we'll give it a password. Okay. And now we have our super user created. Let's go ahead and set up a basic serializers, views, and URLs just to have everything working, and then we'll double check it in our browser API in the browser to make sure everything's working as it should be. So we'll start by creating a serializer, and I'm going to follow this guide kind of loosely just to get things set up, make sure everything's working. So inside of our portfolio app here, I'm going to go and create a new file, and I'll save this as serializers.py. And let's go ahead and create a serializer. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy all of this right here. We'll paste it right here, and I can go and clean up the imports. I don't need the group. And so what we're doing here is we're bringing in the default user model. So from django.contrib.auth.models, import user. And then we're also importing the serializers from the REST framework. And I'm going to go ahead and change this from hyperlinked model serializer to model serializer. And this is how we set up a serializer. Once again, if you're unfamiliar with this, I have a video on this. It will be in the Django REST Framework crash course in the description if you want to see it. But we're creating a model serializer. We're using the meta class to set our data for the serializer. We're using this user model, and these are the fields we want to serialize in the serializer. The URL, and actually we'll remove URL. We'll change this to ID, I guess, since we use model serializer. ID, username, email, and groups. Okay, and that's the serializer. Now we'll go into our views.py and we'll create a view. So once again, we can follow this documentation right here, and they have a view for us that we can start with. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, come back in here. I can replace everything and this render import. We don't need that. I'm going to remove the group from the import up here and remove the group serializer. We didn't make that. We don't really need that. And this will need to change as well. This will be just, I guess, dot serializers. From dot serializers, import user serializer. And I think the rest of that should be good. Okay, so now we're creating a user view set, and a view set will just handle all of the basic routes we need. The get, post, put, and delete, get one, get all those sorts of things. All of those routes will be here for us automatically. We set some more settings inside this view set here, a query set, which will get all of the objects. That's what we're doing here. User objects.all will get all the objects, and then we can sort them and order them any way we want. In this case, we're ordering them by order by, and then minus date join to put the newest first. We're set a serializer class, which is the user serializer class we created over here. So we're using that serializer, and we're setting some permission classes. So we're requiring them to be authenticated for this endpoint. Okay, now let's go ahead and save that. And now the final step to get all this working is we want to set a URL pattern for this view set. So inside the portfolio app, I'm going to create a new file and save this as urls.py. And once again, this is what we'll need right here. So I'm going to go ahead and start by copying all of this, but we're going to remove some of it. I'll paste all that right there. Let's remove our auth here. And we'll remove this as well, and I'll create a new path. Actually, no, we'll keep that one there. We need that one there. And they can go ahead and delete this group's router.register right here. Okay, so now real quickly, what we're doing here, let's change this import.views. So what we're doing right here is we're bringing in this thing called the router, or in this case, the default router from the REST framework. And what this will do is it'll automatically create all of our routes for our view set for us. So if you're familiar with how the routes will look, it would look something like, you know, in the browser here, if I went to slash, users, this will get all users. If I went users /1, this would get the ID, the user with the ID of 1. I could do a post to /users to create a new user. I could use a put at user /1 to get to update a existing user, etc. All that's created and handled for us by this default router. And then for every route we want to register, we need to call router.register, pass in a string here. And so this string will be the /users /whatever that we're using. So the users /1 or whatever will be set. That text is set by this right here. So this sets the text for the route, and then we set the view set after that. And then finally, we need to create this URL patterns list here, pass in a path, and include the router.urls. With those changes done, we need to go ahead and use this file and bring it in to our root URLs file. So inside the API folder, go to the urls.py, and we'll add a route that looks similar to this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this route here, paste it here, remove the text in here, and we'll do include REST, instead of REST framework.urls, we'll include portfolio.urls. And then we'll indent this in to match right there. Okay, now with all of that done, let's go ahead and run our server. So we'll do a Python 3 manage.py run server. And we're getting an error. Path admin. I forgot to put the trailing comma right here. Fix that, save it, come back here, see if there's any other errors. There is. Cannot import name views from portfolio.views. Views.py. Let's change this import right here to just from dot import views. That's what it should be, not dot views import views. I just messed that up. Okay, but that done. Okay, that fixes all our problems. Okay, now let's go ahead and go to the browser here, and we'll go to localhost/:8000. Refresh the page here, and this is our browsable API we can use to test things out. And we have this new users route. So this is good. Everything's working like it should be. Right now, it's saying it's giving us an error saying that authentication credentials are not provided because we didn't log in, and we're requiring the user to be logged in to get this view. To test things out, what we can do is we can change this is authenticated to allow any. And then we come back here, refresh the page, and now it gives us everything to create a new user right here, pass a username, email address, whatever else, any groups. We can also, up here, we can do a get to get all users. We could go to users/1 in the browser here, and this will allow us to update a user that's already created. We can do a put request here. We can do a get to get that one user. We can do a delete to delete it, all those sorts of things. So that's what I was talking about earlier with the URL patterns, users/1, users, all of that stuff is available through our router automatically. Okay, perfect. So now our backend is all set up. We'll go ahead and build this out in the next video. For now, to finish up this video, let's go ahead and create our front end. So we have our API folder. Let's go ahead and create a front end folder, and we'll install React. And we'll use React to build a front end to display all of our data for us. So if I open up the terminal here, I'll stop the server, I'll go up a folder, and okay, so now I'm in the folder with the API and the env. I can go ahead and deactivate my virtual environment. I don't need that anymore. And then what I can run here is npx create React app frontend. And that will install the app. If you're unfamiliar with create React app, I have a link right here. And I'll put this in the description as well, but it goes through how to set things up. It just automatically sets up a React app for us without having to handle all the dependencies ourselves. Just makes it a little bit easier for us. But we don't need that anymore, so I'll close that out. And this will take a minute to install. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead until it's all ready to go. Okay, it finished up now. You can see our instructions here how to get things up and running. We can cd into front end, and we can run npm start to start up the app. And it should open up a new tab here, and it should load the default React with the spinning logo. And there we go. So now we have our default project set up and running. For this project, I'm going to use Tailwind to style the app. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up in this video so we're all ready to go when we go to build this. So if we went and just did a search for React Tailwind, they'll give us a link here where we can click on it, and it will give us the instructions to set things up. I'll go ahead and put this in the description as well. We already did this first step. We created a new app. We named it. We named ours front end. We CD'd into it. So now we can go ahead and install these packages right here. So I'll copy this. I'll come back here. I'm going to go ahead and stop the server for now. and we'll install npm install -D Tailwind CSS post CSS auto prefixer. We'll install those packages. Next step here is we need to set up our modules that exports in the tailwind.config. So this content right here, we'll copy all of this, and we will jump back into our project, open up the front end folder. I'll go over these files here in a second, but for now, let's just go ahead and, oh, I forgot one command. I forgot to run this init-p. Let's go ahead and run that real quick, and that will add some more files to our project for us. Okay, so now with that done, we can go ahead and copy all of this right here. We'll come back into our project, and now we have this tailwind.config.js. We'll replace this content line with what we just copied, which just sets up the location of our files here inside the source and all that sort of stuff. So that should be ready to go there. Next, we need to add these Tailwind directives to our CSS. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all three of these. And it says into our index.css file. So we'll find our index.css. And up here at the top, we can go ahead and paste those right there. We'll save that. And that should be it. Now we can go ahead and run start to run our dev server and check everything out and see if it works. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll run npm run start. Okay, now let's go ahead and go into the app.js file. We'll delete all of this and we'll check to make sure everything's working. So I'll go more in depth on the Tailwind styles when we actually get into making our styles. But for now, as a test here, I'll put home, and in here I'll do a class name equals, and we'll do something like width -1/2 to set the width at 50% of the screen. We'll do mx-auto to center it. We'll do a text-center to put the text in the center of the container. So if this works correctly, we should have a home text on the screen that should be centered in the middle of the screen. So let's come back here, and there we go. So it is centered in the middle of the screen. We can make it larger if you wanted to with something like text-2XL or something. And now it's a little bit bigger. We could make that much bigger and do something a lot bigger. I don't know, 5 maybe. And now it's really big. Okay, so everything's working correctly. We can use our Tailwind styles to style up this page. So that's all we want to do here just to get things ready to go. So if you can add these styles and it looks like that, and then you know you're all set up and ready to go. For the last part of this video, I'm going to quickly go over what these files are, and at least the ones we're going to use are, and then we'll be ready to go in the next video to build out our API and then build out the front end. So the app.css is just another CSS file that we're loading in here inside of our app.js file. The app.js file is like our kind of our root component. It's like our main app component that we load in inside the index.js. This is more like the root file. You can see we render the app component to the DOM here, which we're setting as a variable being root.render, and then we're rendering our app component. So everything that we want to use has to go through either this index.js or more likely this app.js. So when we create separate components and we don't put them inside this app.js file, they won't actually load on the screen. That's because this is the component that's actually getting rendered to the screen. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, I have a crash course on React as well that I'll put in the description in case you need to go through that first. Next, we have this test file here. We're not going to get in the tests probably in this series, so I'm going to ignore that for now. Index.css, this is another CSS file, and we're using it to load in our Tailwind styles. We won't really do much CSS because we're using Tailwind, so most of this won't really matter for what we're doing. Index.js, I already talked about that a little bit. This logo.svg, we're not using that, so we'll skip on that. Web vital step test, we're going to skip all of that. We don't need any of that. In the public folder, this has some other things here. We could set up the robots.txt, the manifest. We're not going to touch most of that probably in this series. We have some post CSS config and some Tailwind config. This is specific to Tailwind. We're not going to probably touch this too much, but if you need to update any configurations, you can find it in the Tailwind documentation. They'll go in one of these two files. But all we really need to do is update this to get it started. So that's all we're doing here. Everything we'll do will pretty much be inside the source folder. So all these other folders I wouldn't really worry about for this series. But that's it. We'll get started on building this out in the next video. I'll put the links to all of the crash courses in the description in case you need to go through those first. If all this is confusing, that'd be a good place to start. So that is it. Thank you for watching. All the code will be in the description below. And I hope to see you in the next video when we start building out this project.